In this video, we're going to continue to develop our main game frame, and what we're going to do is we're going to add a little section where we can actually play our game, and possibly add a couple other features. We'll see how this goes in terms of timing. So remember, the setup here is I have my J-frame, which represents my kind of screen area, and then I pasted a panel on this, and then on the panel I put a couple buttons. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another panel. I'm going to put it inside of here, and this panel is going to be where the actual actions of my game occur. Again, remember, we're not necessarily following all best programming habits in terms of developing a GUI. This video, and well, these sets of videos are focusing on how do we kind of connect our understanding of objects and classes to an environment where it's a little bit more interactive. So with that in mind, let's dive in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to create and encapsulate a new JPanel called window. I'm not actually going to construct this yet. I'm going to come down into my constructor for my game, MC class, and I'm going to now construct this. Now, the window object, I'm going to want to be painting stuff to it. So I'm going to use this technique for overriding the paint method. So because window is a JPanel, it inherits this method called paint from the component class. I want to kind of give window a new set of instructions around what to do when we paint to it. So what I'm going to do is I'll write my line that essentially constructs the object, and then I open a brace, close the brace with a semicolon, and I can write any custom methods that are associated with just this object inside of here. So here I'm going to override the paint method. And like I said in my previous video, for now we're just going to actually write this line here. Again, we haven't talked too much about hierarchies, or we haven't talked at all about hierarchies, but essentially that paint method that already exists, it does some important things. So if I just write, if I want to execute it, if I just put paint, it's going to actually end up calling this paint right here, and we end up in this infinite kind of method call. So if I go super.paint, what it does is looks for the next paint method in the hierarchy. Alright, so we've constructed our object. Now I'm going to come down here, and if I run this right now, you know, this window object exists, but it's not on the on the panel yet. So I want to place it right here essentially. The top left corner of the window pane is going to be right there. So I have to actually do a little bit of calculations. Remember, the panel 0, 0 is right here, and my button is 300 in width. So the point right here is going to be 0, 300. So if I just slide this to the side, there's my width, 300, 0, sorry I said 0, 300. 300 along the X, 0 along the Y, and then I have my length, my width, and my height of this panel. So if I bring this in, what I've then done is set the bounds of my panel, meaning when you set bounds of an object, the first two represent the location, the X, Y position, and the second two are the width and the height. So now I need to add this panel to my screen. So if I come down below here, I'm going to go panel dot add window. So basically I'm going to add the window to my main panel. If I run this now, I get something like this. Now you don't see anything yet. So let's give this window a border. So if I go window dot set border, new line border, color dot red, and let's do a width of 4. So there's this nice method in here, nice instance method called set border. So set border is using window as the implied object, and essentially you construct a nice line border around that object. So if I run this, there's my main game frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my game kind of playing in here. So how can we do this? What can we do that's interesting here? Well, what we can do is we can we could draw whatever we want. So inside of here, I might do something like g dot draw rect, and maybe I want to position it 10, 10, 40, 40. I'm just going to draw a rectangle in there right now. So if I run this and I click, there's my rectangle that is drawn. So remember, when I draw this now, because I'm drawing inside this window here, this top left corner is the origin of the window. So positive x, positive y. Maybe I'm going to do g dot draw line, and there's a whole bunch in here. So let's draw a line at, say, 40. Let's see, if my rectangle is 10, 10, and it's 40 in width and 40 in height. That means the bottom right-hand corner is going to be 50, 50, I believe. And let's set it to 200, 200 as the line. So the way the draw line method works is it actually goes and draws x1, y1, x2, y2. So I run this. So I could draw a neat little picture in here. Now maybe I want this line to appear and disappear every time I press this button. So let's do that, and then that should be a good place to kind of end this video. So one thing I want to kind of stress at this point is always do your drawing to this panel in this method. Sometimes the temptation is, once you figure out you'll might draw things to this panel using the get graphics method somewhere else. Good practice to do all your painting inside this method here. It keeps it a little bit more organized and also addresses some other problems later on. So perhaps what I want to do is, when the user clicks a button, is every time I click this button, I want this line to appear and then disappear. So it's going to basically tap on and off. So if I come up here, if we remember, this is my code that gets executed if I click that first button. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to declare a Boolean called dflag1. So that's going to be short for draw flag 1. And we're going to set that initially to false. So if I come down here into my paint method, I'll find it, there it is I'm going to put an if statement in here. If dflag1 is equivalent to true, essentially I draw this. Close that up. There it is. So essentially what I'm saying is, if the flag is true, I'm going to draw that line. And now, so if I run this, the line doesn't appear because it gets in there, and remember, I initialized this flag to false. So what I'm going to do is, when I click my button, I'm going to set the flag is true. Oh, not flag, sorry, dflag1. I called it dflag1 because it, again, draw flag 1. So now if I run this, so what's going to happen is, when I click this button here, this code gets executed here, which is going to result in this flag moving from false to true. Now you'll notice it doesn't draw. The reason why it doesn't draw yet is because I want to actually do a second thing, as I have to give the computer a command to kind of re-render what's on this screen. Now I could do this with window as my paint. I could invoke the method by doing this. And let's see if this works. No, it didn't work. That's odd. Well, this is interesting to me. I have to add it. That's the problem. Pardon me. So, paint method down here. You see how the paint method takes a graphics object? That's the problem. That's the error there. So if I come back up here, if I try and call the paint method, the question is, what graphics object do I use? And I can do window.getGraphics. So I can actually invoke the paint method by simply saying whatever the panel is that I want to paint, call the method, but then I have to generate this graphics object. So now, if I run this and I click this button, I get my line. Because what's happened is done two things. When I click this button, it changes the flag from false to true, and then what it does is it actually invokes the paint method. Now this works perfectly fine, but this is actually bad practice. We don't want to call paint directly. We can, but the problem with calling paint directly is that there's some kind of housekeeping things that happen when we want to render a screen. And if you go directly to paint, that doesn't happen. So whenever you want the panel that you're using to repaint, use a method called repaint. This is going to do the exact same thing, but it actually deals with some kind of housekeeping things. Notice as well, repaint has no parameters, so I don't have to generate the graphics object associated with the window. So if I run this now, for all intents and purposes, this does the same thing, but the nice thing now is that some other kind of background things are happening that are very useful. So the takeaway here is never call the paint method directly, always call it using repaint. Now this is great. Let's just wrap this up with, I run this and I click once and it draws my line. Maybe every time I click it, I want it to kind of once turn the line on, click again, turn the line off, on, off, on, off. So what I'm going to do here is, as opposed to just setting the flag to true, I'm actually going to add a little if statement. If dflag1 is equivalent to false. So if the flag is false, we're going to make it true, else. So essentially this little chunk of code here is going to toggle the flag between true and false, provided I spell the variable right. Again, because there's one line of code associated with my condition, I don't need braces. One line of code associated with my else, I don't need braces. So if I run this now my line comes on and off. So here's the thing you can do if you want to play around a bit with this, is take each of your buttons, add a selection of booleans, and then try and make your image change based on what you click on the screen. Anyways, I hope that video helped, and we'll continue to develop this in our next video.